I do playing football. That football's been lying around for a while. And reading books have in common. Besides, of course, that both of them often involve the skins of dead animals, pig skins and calf and the like. Well, quite a lot, I think, as I will try to explain. When I was a kid, growing up in mid-nowhere, especially in high school, I was the very incarnate logo of the Kindle app. I love to read. I spent my lunch periods devouring French, well, lots of books, mostly French novels, oddly enough. I read a lot of Hugo and Verne and Camus and an occasional dabble of Dumas. And I didn't really think that I enjoyed sports. Partly that was because baseball was inflicted upon us. And although baseball is supposed to be the sport of readers, I've always found it to be entirely boring, standing around waiting for the ball to come your way. I kind of liked football as a casual thing to play in the backyard or the local park. But I never, I did join a team in the 6th grade. And it kind of was what turned me off of it. It quickly degenerated into warfare, and the fans didn't help. When we were playing in the backyard, there were no fans standing around saying, kill, 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 no riots afterwards. I would begin somewhere along the line to play tennis. I've never understood why I could hit a tennis ball almost every time, whereas a baseball I could miss almost every time. Perhaps because I chose to play tennis and I was an obstinate son of a bitch. Maybe because one has more time to study the path of a tennis ball, although they are traveling at a higher speed. We'll come back to tennis. And then I started, somewhere along the line running, and I quite enjoyed running. I never ran competitively except against myself. I could put in, once upon a time, as many 5-minute miles as my schedule allowed. And these things, of course, were called sports. In college, I started playing on Sunday afternoons soccer. That was before colleges in this country had real football teams, except the really snooty ones. So again, there were no fans, no chance of this afternoon activity reverting to warfare. Which brings us sort of to my theory of what sports are. I have a theory that sports are sort of ritualized, obsolete practices and preservations of activities which were once very useful to a society. Football certainly resembles, with the shoulder pads and helmets and the like, the sort of armed hand-to-hand battle of the Middle Ages. And once upon a time, runners were an important form of conveying messages. And if our power grid were to go out, which you could do very easily, or the truck stopped running, well, runners might become an important thing again, as messengers, not just of the gods, but of us mortals. Now, I confess, I'm not quite sure how tennis fits into this scheme. I'm not quite sure what tennis was at one time when it was perhaps more useful to our society than it is now. But When I signed up for Facebook many years ago, they wanted you to choose a sport that you liked and a sporter that you followed, and I chose Rafa because, well, gosh, tennis and Rafa. I even, for a while, I think, said that I followed Barca, and I did for a while because Barcelona is such a magnificently strange and wonderful place. But these days, I think that reading has sort of become a sport as well. What I mean by that is that even when I was growing up, reading was one of the primary ways that we learned. In fact, in England, going to college is called reading at reading at university, and that has been true for a good long while. These days, however, and it certainly was accelerated by the recent inconvenience, but it was something that was happening for a while. Reading has sort of left the centerpiece of our learning, and we do all of our learning, or much of our learning, online. And, I confess that I have myself almost abandoned nonfiction reading because I find that if there's a book that seems interesting to me, I can almost always find the author explaining his ideas or her ideas, and I find the actual speaking, the actual facial expressions to be much richer, a much richer form of a wider bandwidth, I guess is the word I'm looking for, than just sequential words on a page. Besides, you can always go back and see, what was that about? I have, I don't know, several thousand bookmarks, an ironic term in itself, in my Chrome browser on different topics that I find interesting, and they take up a lot less room than the books would. I can access them anywhere. And I almost never see anyone reading in public anymore. A few old people do. I've been always curious whether young people have Kindles. I have a Kindle, and I like it. I have about, more than 1,000 books on it now. But I don't often just sit down and read for a long period of time. It's my companion on buses, trains, and airplanes. And I find that mostly on buses, trains, and airplanes, it is only the older people who are reading. There's one young man on a bus that I take about once a week who reads, but most young people play games. And learning for the Western world is more and more becoming something that happens on a screen, like what I'm using to make this video with. Therefore, reading is becoming, I would suggest, a sport, a ritualized activity done for amusement, and somewhat ritualized, for instance, I always try to have a cup of coffee with me when I read. That's sort of part of the, but then I do that watching videos as well these days. Preservation of a skill that once was very widely important, but which is becoming less important all the time. I don't think that this is necessarily a bad thing. I think playing football games is probably not as destructive of human life and property as all-out warfare. Although we do still seem not to be willing to give up on our warfare, are we? And it is sad how quickly a football game can turn into close to a war. I was in the band in high school, and there were a couple of towns that we didn't go to the dances that were always held after football games because it was just known that in those towns there would be fighting in the streets, often blood in the streets after a football game. I don't know that we lose much learning by screen over learning by reading. It's a different kind of learning, true, but it's something that people have noticed for a long time. There are different kinds of learning. Plato, for instance, Plato had Socrates complain that writing was destroying people's memories. Plato also had Socrates condemn the theater, condemn drama. Perhaps because drama, our movies, are both more immersive, is that the word? More easily immersive than reading a story often is. Requires less skill, although there is, I think, a certain amount of skill required to really watch movies, but that's a different topic. Still, for better or for worse, and it's not, I think, very helpful to lament these changes, and I think usually they're for the better. Reading, I think, has become a sport. And as I get older and my heart doesn't like for me to play tennis or run as much as it used to, I'm left with bicycling and reading, and so I can still be a sportsman even at my own age. Well, I would be happy to hear your thoughts, whether you agree with me that reading is becoming a sport or whether you think I'm just addled in my old age, which is both could be true. How you've interacted with sports through your lifetime and how you think they work in society these days as well. And I appreciate your watching, and of course a like and subscribe would be very sporting of you, wouldn't it? Thank you.